Mangini back with us. Coach, you surprised the Bucs are heavy favorites Sunday against the Saints?
No, I'm not surprised at all by the change in the line. You know, they opened the season with the Saints, and they're at probably as big a disadvantage as you can be in. Figured that the Saints had the same head coach, offensive coordinator, quarterback, tons of guys back, all that those reps built up and familiarity built up, and Tampa Bay was dealing with a radically different situation. Tom didn't play very well in that first game. And now what you see is Tampa Bay is trending in the right direction. I'd say the biggest place they're trending in the right direction is penalties. They had the 11 penalties against Chicago, and then in the last 3 games, they've had 7 total. To me, that growth of Tom working with the receivers, Tom understanding the system, Tom understanding the players that he's working with, the familiar. Yeah, it is Tom, because he does have an impact from a culture perspective. And we could pretend that he doesn't, but there is an impact from a culture perspective and a familiarity perspective. And then you look at what's happening in New Orleans, and there's been some issues, and then there's been some infighting, and people are getting suspended, and that's always a concern. So does this line make sense? Yeah, it makes absolute sense.
Yeah, Nick is making a lot of excuses, Coach, and he's doing a lot of pretending with Tom, and I can't wait to hear his take. But look, I'm not surprised because they're the better team. They're the more complete team. They're getting it done on defense. Their offensive line, Wow's been talking about them for the past two days. Their offensive line is 1 or 2 best in the league. Tom Brady is playing really well. They're getting healthier at the receiver position. They just added Antonio Brown, so I'm not surprised. Now, if Tom was there longer than 8 games, the spread should be more. In New Orleans, they have the continuity. They have the chemistry that Coach just talked about. Sean Payton is willing his team to victory right now. You took away 13 due to injury, hamstring, ankle, and they couldn't figure it out early on, and now they're finding ways to do it. So hats off to them. So Nick, I can't wait to hear your take on Tom. You need to stop pretending like Coach said, because he is the X factor, and why this team is having so much success so fast. They had no offseason. They have new pieces. He's learning a new offense, and they're sitting right here as one of the best teams in the NFL.
Brandon, listen, I know that you media talking heads like Brandon Marshall and Eric Mangini like to make football games just about the quarterback. But myself, a true football guy, I like to look at the whole 53. I always thought Coach didn't give Dante Scarnecchia in New England enough credit for the offensive line play. I think it's special teams are a third of the game. I think there's a lot more we need to look at than just Tom Brady when we talk about the success of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think the Saints are going to win Sunday, and I'm on the record on that. I think Saints are going to sweep the season series, and we're going to start to evaluate the Bucs a little differently. But I actually don't think that's the most interesting opinion here. The most interesting opinion is the one I want to ask from Coach, because Coach, I think it's fair to say going into the year, you were, as much as you love and respect Tom, I think had a healthy dose of skepticism about whether or not this was going to work. New system, new coach, new environment, new everything. I think it's fair to say you had some trepidation. We haven't talked to you about this in a couple weeks. Seeing what they did against Green Bay, seeing how they're playing right now, what's your level of optimism about the Bucs, not just this week over the Saints, but their ability to potentially win the NFC as they're currently favored to do?
Here's where my level of optimism kicks in. It kicks in when a team starts to show discipline in areas where they were extremely undisciplined. Yep. When you can go from 11 penalties in one game to 7 penalties in the next 3, to me, that's trending in the right direction. When you look at them offensively, each week there is a familiarity that happens. And I was very skeptical, because the idea of forcing someone who's been running one system for 20 years to suddenly learn something, to me, was not optimizing his potential and impact. But it looks like they've trended more towards the things that Tom has traditionally done. And that's helped. And each week that he has familiarity with people, and is able to impact the locker room, because typically the early part of the season, free agents, they have very little impact from a character standpoint because they don't know anybody. But as it moves on, they can affect the locker room a lot more. So
Right.
Those things to me are trending all in the right direction. And if it keeps going that way with what they've been able to do defensively, I'd say they're going to be in the mix with everybody else.
Yeah. Hey, Coach, this might be a little bit awkward to do on live TV, but I think that you and I should start a pro
Thanks
football
for the heads up.
consulting business. Wilds and Mangini Defensive Consulting, 2 Super Bowl champions here to help your team out. We call defensive coordinators and head coaches before the game, and we got a lot of rings between us. We call defensive coordinators and head coaches before the game, and we say, hey, it's called one more thing. That's what it's called, one more thing. It's like Steve Jobs, one more thing. So coaches can sleep, and we're like, hey, we've got the one secret thing. So here's the first one. We're going to give it to the Saints for free, and then you can tell me if you like the business. Antonio Brown, living with Tom Brady. We know that he's got a different relationship than anybody else. If Godwin doesn't get the ball, it's like, all right, go home, Godwin. No big deal. If Mike Evans doesn't get the ball, like, all right, Mike Evans, I'll see you on Tuesday. But if Antonio Brown doesn't get the ball, I'm like, okay, we're going to ride home together. So if you shut Antonio Brown out, you freeze him out, I think Tom Brady's going to be like, oh, boy, second quarter, I haven't given Antonio Brown. I got to have breakfast with the guy tomorrow. It's going to be a thing. We sow chaos within the Tampa Bay organization by freezing out Antonio Brown, and it gets into Tom Brady's head. That's our first. That's a free one to the Saints, courtesy of Mangini and Wilds. One More Thing Consulting. Coach, can you also sell that idea since we're in business now?
Yeah, unfortunately, Wilds, my kids are in private school and they're all going to have to go to college. So I don't think we're going to make enough money to take care of that with that business model that you have set up. The other thing I'd say is, judging by the house that Tom Brady's living in, even if things don't go well with Antonio Brown, there's enough space where they could be far apart in the same house. So I don't think that's going to have the impact either. I like the idea of a startup. I just don't know if that's the one that's going to work for us, Wilds.
No, but they're going to freeze him out. It's going to get into Brady's head. There's something to that.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.